Hello, guys and gals, and this is a reading of Farmer Giles of Ham. It is a story by J.R.R. Tolkien. First of all, of course, we are going to look at the copyright information, which we didn't do last time, but I'm pretty sure it's okay. This is copyright 1949, and it says all rights reserved. So that's what I'm going by. If there are any copyright disputes, I will remove the video. Take it down and delete it. So, anyways. In the last episode, or actually it would be the first one, we learned about Farmer Giles and how he shot a giant in the face with a blunderbuss. It didn't kill the giant, much less hurt it much, but it scared it away, and now he is a hero. He got a letter from the king. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue and find out what else happens to Farmer Giles from this. Better than the testimonial was the accompanying gift. The king sent a belt and a long sword. To tell the truth, the king had never used the sword himself. It belonged to the family and had been hanging in his armory time out of mind. The armorer could not say how it came there, or what might it be used for, what might be the use of it. Plain, heavy swords of that kind were out of fashion at court just then, so the king thought, yet the very thing for a present to a rustic. But Farmer Giles was delighted, and his local reputation became enormous. Giles much enjoyed the turn of events. So did his dog. That's the king writing the letter, and then that's the sword, I guess. So did his dog. He never got his promised whipping. Giles was a just man, according to his lights. In his heart, he gave a fair share of the credit to Garm, though he never went so far as to mention it. He continued to throw hard words and hard things at the dog when he felt inclined, but he winked at many little outings. Garm took to walking far afield. The farmer went about with a high step. Okay, we are on page 86 now. Let's go. And luck smiled on him. The autumn and early winter work went well. All seemed set fair until the dragon came. Oh, great! Now there's a dragon. In those days, dragons were already getting scarce in the island. None had been seen in the midland region of Augustus Bonifacius for many a year. There were, of course, the dubious marches and the uninhabited mountains westward and northward, but they were a long way off. And those parts, once upon a time, there dwelt many a number of dragon of one kind or another. And they had made raids far and wide, but the Middle Kingdom was in those days famous for the daring of the king's knights, and so many stray dragons had been killed or had returned with grave damage that the others gave up going that way. It was still the custom of dragon's tail to be served up at a king's... Oh, I get it. So that's a dragon's tail. Okay. It was still a custom for a dragon's tail to be served up at the king's Christmas feast, and each year a knight was chosen for the duty of hunting. He was supposed to set out upon St. Nicholas' Day and come home with a dragon's tail, no later than the eve of the feast. But for many years now, the royal cook had made a marvelous confection, a mock dragon's tail of cake and almond paste, with cunning scales of hard iced sugar. The chosen knight had then carried this into the hall on Christmas Eve. While the fiddles played and the trumpets rang, the mock dragon's tail was eaten after dinner on Christmas Day. And everybody said, to please the Oh, and everyone said, to please the cook, that it tasted much better than real tail. Okay, I would imagine so. That was the situation when a real dragon turned up again. The giant was largely to blame after his adventure. He used to go about in the mountains visiting his scattered relations more than had been his custom, and made more than and much more than they liked. For he was always trying to borrow a large copper pot, but whenever he got the loan of one or not, he would sit and talk in his long-winded, lumbering fashion about the excellent country down a ways east and all the wonders of the wide world. He had got it into his head that he was a great and daring traveler. A nice land, he would say. Pretty flat, soft to the feet, and plenty to eat for the taking. Cows, let's see. There we go. Cows, and sheep all over the place. Easy to spot if you look carefully. But what about the people? Said they. I never saw any, said he. There was not a night to be seen or heard, my dear fellows. Nothing worse than a few stinging flies by the river. Why didn't you go back and stay there? Said they. Oh, well, there's no place like home, they say. Said he. But maybe I shall go back one day when I have a mind. And anyway, I went there once, which is more than most folks can say. Now about that copper pot and these rich lands, they would hurriedly ask. These delectable regions full of undefeated cattle. Which way do they lie? And how far off? Oh, he would answer, away east or southeast, but it's a long journey. And they would and he would give such an exaggerated account of the distance that he had walked in the woods, hills and plains, and he had crossed that none of the others less four-legged giants, less long-legged giants ever set out. Still, the talk got about. Then the warm summer was followed by a hard winter. It was bitter cold up in the mountains, and food was scarce. The talk got louder. Lowland sheep and kine from the deep pastures were much discussed. The dragons pricked up their ears. There's the dragons. The dragons were hungry, and these rumors were attractive. So knights are mythical, said the younger and less experienced dragons. We always thought so. At least they may be getting rare, thought the older and wiser worms. Few and far and few, and no longer to be feared. There was one dragon who was deeply moved. Chrysophylax. Dives was his name, for he was of ancient and imperial lineage and very rich. He was cunning, inquisitive, greedy, well armored, but not overbold. But at any rate, he was not in the. Let's see, I need page 90 now. Not in the. Here we go. Not in the least afraid of flies or insects of any sort or size, and was mortally hungry. So one winter's day, about a week before Christmas, Chrysophylax spread his wings and took off. He landed quietly in the middle of the night, plump in the heat of the midland realm of Augustus Bonifacius Rex et Bacillus. He did a deal of damage in a short while, smashing and burning and devouring sheep, cattle, and horses. This was in a part of the land a long way from Ham, but Garm got the fright of his life. He had gone off on a long expedition, and taking advantage of his master's favor, he had ventured to spend the night, or a night or two away from home. He was following an engaging scent along the eaves of the wood, when he turned a corner and came suddenly into a new and alarming smell. He ran indeed slap into the tail of Chrysophylax Dives, who had just landed. Never did a dog turn his own tail round and bolt home swifter than Garm. The dragon, hearing his yelp, turned and snorted, but Garm was already far out of range. He ran all the rest of the night and arrived home about breakfast time. "Help, help, help," he cried outside the back door. Giles heard and did not like the sound of it. It reminded him of the unexpected things, unexpected things might happen when all seemed to be going well. "Wife, let that dratted dog in," said he, "and take a stick to him." Garm came bundling into the kitchen with his eyes starting and his tongue hanging out. "Help!" he cried. "How? Oh, now what have you been doing this time?" said Giles, throwing a sausage at him. "Nothing," panted Garm, too flustered to give heed to the sausage. "Well, stop doing it, or I'll skin you," said the farmer. I've done no wrong. I didn't mean no harm," said the dog, "but I came on a dragon accidentally. All accident-like, and it frightened me." The farmer choked in his beer. "Dragon," said he. "Drat you for a good-for-nothing, nosy Parker. What did you want to go and find a dragon for?" Let me see. 92. "At this time of the year, and me with my hands full." "Where was it?" "Oh, north over the hills and far away, beyond the standing stones and all," said the dog. "Oh, away there," said Giles, mighty relieved. There's strange folks in those parts. I've heard tell, and aught might happen in their land. Let them get on with it. Don't come worrying me with such tales. Get out." Garm got out and spread the news all over the village. He did not forget to mention that his master was not scared in the least. Quite cool he was, and went on with his breakfast. People chatted about it pleasantly at their doors. "How like old times," they said, just as Christmas is coming, too. So seasonable. How pleased the king will be. He will be able to have real tail this Christmas. But more news came the next day. The dragon, it appeared, was exceptionally large and ferocious. He was doing terrible damage. "What about the king's knights?" people began to say. Others had already asked the same question. Indeed, messengers were now reaching the king from the villages most afflicted by Chrysophylax, and they said to him, as loudly and as often as they dared, "Lord, what of your knights?" But the knights did nothing. Their knowledge of the dragon was still quite unofficial, so the king brought the matter to their notice, fully and formally asking for necessary action at their early convenience. He was greatly displeased when he found that their convenience would not be early at all, and was indeed daily postponed. Yet the excuses of the knights were undoubtedly sound. First of all, the royal cook had already made the dragon's tail for the Christmas. Being a man who believed in getting things done in good time, it would not do at all to offend him by bringing the real tail at the last minute. He he was a very valuable servant. Never mind the tail, cut the head off and put an end to him, cried the messengers from the villages most nearly affected. But Christmas had arrived, and most unfortunately, a grand tournament had been arranged for St. John's Day. Knights of many realms had been invited and were coming to compete for a valuable prize. It was obviously unreasonable to spoil the chances of the Midland Knights by sending their best men off on a dragon hunt before the tournament was over. After that came the New Year holiday, but each night the dragon had moved, and each move had brought him nearer to Ham. On the night of New Year's Day, people could see a blaze. 93. Blaze. Oh, here we go. In the distance, the dragon had settled in a wood about 10 miles away and was burning merrily. And it was burning merrily. He was a hot dragon when he felt in the mood. After that, people began to look at Farmer Giles and whisper behind his back. It made him very uncomfortable, but he pretended not to notice it. The next day, the dragon came several miles nearer. Then Farmer Giles himself began to talk loudly of the scandal of the king's knights. I should like to know what they do not... I should like to know what they do to earn their keep, he said. So should we, said everyone in Ham. But the miller added, some men still get knighthooded by sheer merit. I am told after all our good Aegidius here is already a knight, in manner of speaking. Did not the king send him a red letter and a sword? There's more to knighthood than a sword, said Giles. There's dubbing and all that, or so I understand. Anyways, I have my own business to attend to. Oh, but the king would do the dubbing. I don't doubt it, if he were asked, and the miller, let us ask him before it's too late. Nay, said Giles, dubbing is not for my sort. I am a farmer, and proud of it. A plain, honest man, and honest men fare ill at court, they say. It is more in your line, Master Miller. The parson smiled, not at the farmer's retort, for Giles and the miller were always giving one another as good as they got, but being bosom enemies, as the saying was in Ham. The parson had suddenly been struck with a notion that pleased him, but he said no more at the time. The miller was not so pleased, and he scowled. Plain certainly, and honest perhaps, said he, but you have to go to the court and be a knight before you kill a dragon? Courage is all that is needed. As only yesterday I heard Master Aegidius declare, surely he has as much courage as any knight. All the folks standing by shouted, of course not, and yes indeed. 3 cheers for the hero of Ham. Then Farmer Giles went home, feeling very uncomfortable. He was finding that a local reputation may require keeping up, and that may prove awkward. He kicked the dog and hid the sword in a cupboard in the kitchen. Up till then it had hung over the fireplace. The next day the dragon moved to the neighboring village of Quercetum, Oakley to the vulgar tongue. He ate not only sheep and cows and 1 or 2 persons of tender age, but he ate the parson too. Rather rashly, the parson had sought to dissuade him from his evil ways. Then there was a terrible commotion. All the people of Ham came up the hill, headed by their own parson, and and they waited on Farmer Giles. "We look to you," they said, as they remained standing round and looking until the farmer's face was redder than his beard. "When are you going to start?" they asked. "Well, I can't start today, and that's a fact," said he. "I've got a lot on hand with my cowman stick and all. I'll see about it." They went away, but in the evening it was rumored that the dragon had moved even nearer, so they all came back. "We look to you, Master Gideus," they said. "Well," said he, "it's very awkward for me just now. My mare has gone lame, and the lambing has started. I'll see about it soon as may be." So they went away once more, not without some grumbling and whispering. The miller was sniggering. The parson stayed behind and could not be got a hold of. He invited himself to supper and made some pointed remarks. He even asked what had become of the sword and insisted on seeing it. It was lying in a cupboard on a shelf hardly long for it, and as soon as Farmer Giles brought it out, in a flash it leapt from the sheath, which the farmer dropped as if it had been hot. The parson sprang to his feet, upsetting his beer. He picked the sword up carefully and tried to put it back in the sheath, but it would not go so much as a foot in, and it jumped clean out again as soon as he took his hand off the hilt. "Dear me, this is very peculiar," said the parson. I'd say it's peculiar. It's an enchanted sword? That's strange. Okay. And he took a good look at both scabbard and blade. He was a lettered man, but the farmer could only spell out large uncials with difficulty, and was none too sure of the reading, even of his own name. That is why he had never given any heed to the strange letter that could dimly be seen on the sheath of the sword. As for the king's armorer, he was so accustomed to runes, names, and other signs of power and significance upon swords and scabbards that he had not bothered his head about them. He thought them all out of date anyways. But the parson looked along, and he frowned. He had expected to find some lettering on the sword or on the scabbard, and that was indeed the idea that had come to him the day before, but now he was surprised at what he saw. For letters and signs there were, to be sure, but he could not make head nor tail of them. There is an inscription on this sheath, and some epigraphical signs are visible also upon the sword," he said. "Indeed," said Giles. "And what may that amount to?" The characters are archaic and the language barbaric," said the parson, to gain time. "A little closer inspection will be required." He begged the loan of the sword for the night, and the farmer let him have it with pleasure. Let's go on here. When the parson got home, he took down many learned books from his shelf, and he sat up far into the night. Next morning it was discovered that the dragon had moved nearer still. All the people of Ham barred their doors and shuttered their windows, and those that had cellars were down into them, and sat shivering in the candlelight. Okay. But the parson stole out and went from door to door, and he told to all who would listen, through a crack or a keyhole, that he had discovered what he had discovered in his study. "Our good Gideus," he said, "by the king's grace, is now the owner of Mordax, the famous sword that in popular romance is more vulgarly called Tailbiter." Okay. Coddy. Oh. If you dissect the word here, Coddy Mordax, you do get Coddy being tail, Mordax being biter. Yeah, okay. Those that heard the name usually opened the door. They all knew the renown of Tailbiter, for that sword had belonged to Bellomaris, the greatest of all the dragon slayers of the realm. Some accounts made him the maternal great-grandfather of the king. The songs and tales of his deeds were many, and if forgotten at court, were still remembered in the villages. That this sword, said the parson, will not stay sheathed if a dragon is within 5 miles, and without a doubt, in a brave man's hands, no dragon can resist it. Then people began to take heart again, and some unshuttered their windows and put their heads out. In the end, the parson persuaded a few to come and join him, but only the miller was really willing to see Giles in a real fix. Seemed to him worth the risk. They went up the hill, not without anxious looks. North across the river, there was no sign of the dragon. Probably he was asleep. He had been feeding very well all the Christmas time. The parson and the miller hammered on the farmer's door. There was no answer, so they hammered louder. At last Giles came out. His face was very red. He also had sat up far into the night, drinking a good deal of ale, and he had begun again as soon as he got up. They all crowded around him, calling him Good Aegidius, Bold Ahon Barbus, Great Julius, Staunch Agricola, Pride of Ham, Hero of the countryside, and they spoke of Coddy Mordax, Tailbiter, the sword that would not be sheathed, death or victory, the glory of the yeomanry, backbone of the country, and the good of one's fellow man, until the farmer's head was hopelessly confused. Now then, one at a time, he said, when he got the chance, what's all this? What's all this? It's my busy morning, you know. So they let the parson explain the situation. Then the miller had the pleasure of seeing the farmer in as tight a fix as he could wish. But things did not turn out quite as the miller expected. For one thing, Giles had drunk a deal of strong ale. For another, he had a strange feeling of pride and encouragement when he learned that his sword was actually Tailbiter. He had been very fond of tales about Bellomaris when he was a boy, and before he had learned it since, he had sometimes wished that he could have a marvelous and heroic sword of his own. So it came over him all of a sudden that he would take Tailbiter and go dragon hunting, but he had been used to bargaining all his life and made one more effort to postpone the event. We're going to leave this here and pick this up. We made it to page 101, looks like. And we're going to find out what excuse Giles is going to have to get out of this situation. Anyways, we have been reading Farmer Giles of Ham by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.